think that statement has been a catalyst for this.
I think it's up over 500% in the last month. The founder of Binance and the former CEO, he's been officially pardoned by Donald Trump.
He's turned it into more of a political thing rather than what it is.
The same wallet that picked the crash just before Trump announced the tariff has now picked this. And everyone's like, this is super fishy. This has to be some sort of insider trading knowledge. There's a lot of opportunities like that. And I only think they're going to get more and more. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. Today I'm joined by Callum, who's a familiar face. He's been on one episode before.
Yes, one episode, yeah.
Callum, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Ted. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Well, you've got some big shoes to fill because Pav would usually be sitting in that chair, but Pav's actually, he's not given birth to a fourth child, but he does have a fourth child now.
He does.
Which he said he would be coming in for the episodes, but understandably, he's got his hands pretty full. So you may or may not see Pav over the next couple of weeks, and you may see more of Callum's face, which is a great addition to the show.
Thank you, Ted.
But Callum, how you been?
I have been very good, thank you, Ted. I have been a bit nervous given the current state we're at in the market. It could go either way. I made a prediction a couple of years ago that our peak this cycle for at least Bitcoin would be between October 5th and November 12th. October 5th, I think, was the day we hit 125, 126. I should have sold. I didn't. I thought I'll wait till November 12th. And now we're back. We've obviously taken a big pullback. We're back to about 114 as of recording today. But still, the nerves are high.
So are you saying we're going to top out on November 12th or have a pullback on November 12th?
My prediction for the peak of this cycle was between those 2 days. So between October 5th and November 12th or either of those days. So I'm hoping that by holding past the October 5th, where we've seen our most recent high, that I've done the right thing and maybe we're heading towards a crazy new high between now and October 12th.
November 12th, yep.
November 12th, sorry, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, man, I'm keen to unpack that because a couple of weeks ago, Pav and I discussed whether, we're going to see the top out in this quarter like we've seen in previous cycles, or whether it continues into, the new year, given, the favorable sort of foundation we've been given from a macro perspective and fundamentals and all that. So I'm interested to pick your brain about that. But we had on Chris Tipper last week. So Chris works at Ainsley Wealth and his sort of expertise is in gold, right? So really interesting conversation there, given gold's, hit an all-time high and now it's pulled back a bit. Did you listen to that one?
I did. I actually really liked it. Chris spoke very well and that episode actually kept me a little bit calm in not closing out my positions. I liked what he was talking about a potential rotation from gold into Bitcoin. Obviously, gold's been hitting all-time highs continuously. It would be nice to see some of that liquidity pulled and pushed into Bitcoin, which
Absolutely.
could hopefully give us more of a run. But yeah, really, really liked the episode with Chris.
I think my biggest key takeaway from that episode is the fact that he owned 2,100 Bitcoin at one point.
Yeah.
Bought it at a couple cents and then sold it $1, thinking he was a genius investor. It just brings a tear to your eye thinking of stories like that, doesn't it?
I would be gutted. That is a huge sum of money in today's value.
I was going to look up how much that is in today's value, and I was like, you know what? I'm just not gonna. It's too much money to even think about.
2.2 billion roughly. Am I right? What's that? 100 grand, 114,000 multiplied by 2,100.
Ridiculous. Not even worth looking at.
Big money.
Yeah. Anyway, he's doing all right for himself, I think. So yeah, perfect. I mean, if you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out. But yeah, listen, we've got a huge episode today because, we'll cover the top movers as usual. Then we've also got some really big news happening, out of the Trump administration, which we always typically have, but this one's probably a bit more juicy than other times. I think there's a lot of controversy around this one, and even some, the C word or the political C word in this case being thrown around. So we'll dive into that. You've got some really key updates key dates coming up this week and how they could impact the crypto market. And then we're going to finish off with a little segment on just explaining how we're playing the current market, what your thoughts are, what my thoughts are. Personally, I'm still bullish and I'll explain in detail why that is. And then I'm keen to hear your thoughts as well. So make sure to stick around for that segment at the end. But first up, top movers. So what do we have this week? So looking at the top movers in the last 7 days, we have Zcash again. Now, for avid listeners of the podcast, you might remember Pav and I sat down a couple of weeks ago when we last did this, and Zcash was the top mover. Why is a privacy coin in the top movers consecutive weeks in a row? I think it's up over 500% in the last month.
Yeah.
Do you have any intel on that?
Well, I had a look at this when it started to move at the start of the month. Now, there's an angel investor in the US. His name, I may pronounce this wrong, but Naval Ravikant. Mm-hmm. He owns an angel investment company. He was an early investor into things like Uber and Twitter, now X. And he posted on X on October 1st. And he just posted a simple statement that said, Bitcoin is insurance against fiat. Zcash is insurance against Bitcoin. And I think that statement has been a catalyst for this. Now, the timing of it is impeccable. He posted it on October 1st. And for most people in the market, you'll know that October gets referred to as Uptober, generally because it's a bullish month. Markets generally rise, or the crypto market certainly rises. So he posted it on October 1st. He is a prominent voice. He's smart money. People listen to him. He's been an early investor in some massive, massive companies. So I think him talking about Bitcoin and talking about Zcash in the same sentence has just been the spark that market needed.
Yeah, not only that, but Arthur Hayes, which is another prominent figure. He used to, own a crypto exchange. Now he's just, a very vocal person in the space. He predicts that Zcash is going to go to $10,000. Now it's currently at about $350, so that's a huge leap, particularly for a privacy coin. Now I want you to explain, because you know this better than I do, why are privacy coins controversial in crypto?
So from, I guess, our perspective, or any centralized exchange's perspective, when we talk about privacy coin, we are effectively saying that the transfers can be hidden on the blockchain while still being verified. So with Bitcoin, if I make a transfer to you, Ted, it will show that my wallet address has interacted with your wallet address. I've sent you some Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. With Zcash, we could hide that. It wouldn't always be hidden. We can just choose to hide it. So these can be a bit of an issue in the crypto space, because when you think about the type of people who want to hide their transactions, it's generally scammers, money launderers, nefarious actors, basically, people who are not up to any good. Yeah. So for us, they're a bit of an issue, and this is where I wonder about Zcash's future potential, because with Bitcoin, we can almost predict what the prices are going to be 10, 20 years from now. With Zcash, it's harder because a lot of centralized exchanges, not just in Australia, but Europe, I think soon to be the United States, they have plans to ban the sale of those from centralized exchanges, meaning that the masses are not going to be able to put money into them or into these assets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even in Australia, we have regulation around centralized exchanges like SwiftX that prevents us from listing privacy tokens like Zcash. Monero is probably the most prominent one, but there's others like Dash and things like that. So yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of hype around it, and there's a bit of a narrative forming around privacy coins right now. But just from an accessibility standpoint, retail traders and people like you and I can't easily access these tokens and invest in them. So it just adds, a few more hurdles to access it. And, speaking in terms of, widespread adoption, which is what you want to see from an investment standpoint and a fundamental point of view, it's harder for Zcash in that case. So I'd probably put a bit of an asterisk on that. I still think it's one to definitely keep an eye out for. And whether we continue to see this momentum build. I think it surpassed its 2021 top.
Yes.
It still hasn't surpassed its 2016 top. So it's been around for a long time, but it'll be interesting to see whether it does, because back then there wasn't nearly as much competition in the market as there is now. So everyone's competing for market share. There's, a million coins out there. They're all saying they're the best, and they're all saying they're revolutionary. It's who comes out on top and sort of gains that widespread adoption and widespread sort of share of voice.
The attractive thing about it is how similar it operates to Bitcoin. It uses a proof of work mechanism. Same as Bitcoin, it will have 21 million tokens that will eventually be in circulation, and it will take roughly the same time because the halving rate is every 4 years.
Yep.
And currently the halving reward for miners is exactly the same, 3.125.
Yeah, so interesting. Copycat.
Yeah, effectively. So in terms of, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, that's what makes Bitcoin so attractive. Zcash has all of those same fundamentals.
Yeah, exactly. But it's probably worth, calling out that people might think, it's the same as Bitcoin, but it's less money, so I can get in earlier. Like, that's not typically how these things work. Like, yeah, it might model itself on Bitcoin because Bitcoin has a successful model, but it doesn't mean it is Bitcoin. It doesn't mean like people are going to use it like Bitcoin or invest in it like Bitcoin. Like, we're not seeing huge institutions put money into Zcash like we are with Bitcoin. Like, Litecoin's very similar. It was a bit of a copycat to Bitcoin. Like, maybe not exactly as the way Zcash is, but it's, proof of work. It's got a 4-year cycle, 4-year halving, sorry. So yeah, it's just worth calling that out. But nonetheless, we will keep an eye on it, and we'll give you guys updates next time we meet, maybe next week. The other one in the top movers, which is up about 24% this week, is Hyperliquid. So for anyone that is an avid listener, you'll know that Pav and I talk about Hyperliquid a lot. It's been very sort of topical, and there's been a narrative building around it, particularly as a perpetuals protocol, and it's sort of been the market leader in that space. I think it's the sitting at number 11 in the top coins by market cap. So it's almost cracking the top 10, which, you're sitting with the likes of Solana, XRP, BNB, Dogecoin. Like, they're very recognizable coins, whereas Hyperliquid's a new coin on the market, but it's gained so much market share recently. I know it's one that I am personally invested in. So I don't know about yourself, Callum.
No, you're the smarter man in the room here, Ted. I looked at it several times. I chose to invest in a different asset that I thought would have significantly more returns, and it has had significantly less returns. And I even looked at it recently when we had that flash crash a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, nah, market's over. So I decided not to get in then, and it's had some decent returns even since then in the last couple of weeks.
It happens to the best of us. I actually picked up a little bit yesterday, or 2 days ago. But if I'm the smartest man in this room, then I'm afraid for this room. But yeah, so Hyperliquid, I mean, no real surprises. It continues to perform. It's sort of in that first cycle phase where it doesn't have a previous cycle. If people are building structures and then looking at, historical analysis of it, it's hard to do on such a new coin like that. So I guess, it's in price discovery, where, who knows, in a bull market, it could just shoot to the moon. Like,
if this market continues, we could still see 10x from here, unsurprisingly.
We'll make sure to clip that and quote it. You're calling for a 10x on Hyperliquid?
I'm not calling for 10x on Hyperliquid. If I am, I'm buying some right now.
Absolutely. Other ones in there, which we won't really go into too much detail, Pump.Fun, which we've talked about at length, being sort of a meme coin launchpad. Then we've got Jupiter, which, similar to Hyperliquid, is a decentralized exchange just on the Solana network. And then the Trump coin is also in there. And I think that's largely off the back of some of our key news stories, which we will dive into right now.
Yeah.
So first off, CZ, you know him, you love him. Anyone who doesn't know him, he's the founder of Binance and the former CEO. He's been officially pardoned by Donald Trump. So for a bit of background on that, so he pleaded guilty for failing to maintain anti-money laundering program at Binance, which subsequently led to a $4 billion settlement and then a 4-year prison sentence. So, Cal, you work in the anti-money laundering counterterrorism space at SwiftX. Could you explain why that is so significant?
Yeah, I mean, it's significant because these AML, CTF laws are there for a very big reason. These people who are laundering money are taking funds from very, very illicit sources. You talk about laundering money. I'm watching Ozark again at the moment, for example.
Yeah,
and it glorifies money laundering. But when you think about the source of those funds that are being laundered, these are coming from some of the worst activity known to humankind.
Yeah.
So not having a program in place, especially an organization like Binance, is almost welcoming these money launderers to start funneling funds through your organization. Obviously, it helps the business. They've been able to grow to number one in the world, but at what cost?
Yeah, and I think the key detail is here, they actually knew about all this activity going on, but they failed to prevent it. So CZ went to jail. He was sentenced to 4 years, but now Trump has officially pardoned him, which I think is damaging because it sets a precedence that you don't really need to follow the rules in order to get ahead, and that's how they did gain so much market share across the world in terms of the centralized exchange space. Trump is basically saying, oh shit, I kicked the mic. Sorry. Trump is basically saying that this ends the war against crypto that was from the Biden administration, right? But I think the key thing to call out here is that this isn't really a political thing going on, right? Like, anti-money laundering has been in place for a long time, and there are laws against that for good reason. Whereas, he's saying, like, the administration, trying to crack down on crypto, whereas it's completely different.
Yeah, he's turned it into more of a political thing rather than what it is.
Exactly. And he's now being accused of favoring corporate interests and even being accused of corruption as well.
Not the first time.
Yeah, not the first time. But it's interesting because this opened up a big conversation around, like, well, who's next? Like, Sam Bankman-Fried, who famously is in jail for the rest of his life, is he going to get pardoned by Trump? Unlikely, because his crimes were much more significant in terms of, like scams and stealing people's money. But still, like, the fact that he's pardoned CZ means, it sets a precedence for, that activity.
Yeah, it's the first stepping stone, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Imagine the SBF does get pardoned, what's next after that,
Please no. But just touching on this, so CoffeeZilla, which he's like a prominent YouTube journalist / investigator, he's actually done a full deep dive into this, like diving into the more corruption thing that I touched on before. So he's notorious for exposing celebrity crypto scams like Logan Paul, Andrew Tate. He even was on the SBF train very early before everything went down. Like, he interviewed him and basically made him call out that his company was a Ponzi scheme. So, but since then he's made allegations of insider trading, particularly with Trump, because there's been a hyperliquid whale that placed a huge short on Bitcoin just before Trump announced, the 100% tariffs on China, which subsequently crashed the market, or a bit of a flash crash. And now this same wallet has placed a bet on Polymarket, which is like a crypto betting marketplace. He placed a bet that CZ would be pardoned before the end of 2025. The same wallet that picked the crash just before Trump announced the tariffs on China has now picked this. And everyone's like, this is super fishy. This has to be some sort of insider trading knowledge, connected to Trump. But then other people are coming out and saying he only made $56K from this bet. So it's not that significant. Like, why would someone with insider trading put that all at risk to make $56K when they made $160 million from that short on the Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think the shorting the market immediately prior to the tariff announcement, that to me is a bit fishy.
Yeah, well, it's the fact that he's been able to pick both, because the CZ thing was rumored that it could happen, but I don't think it was picking up any steam until, essentially it happened, right? Especially he's picked that it would happen before the end of 2025, and there's only, 2 months before the end of 2025.
Yeah.
I would recommend anyone listening to go check out CoffeeZilla, because he does some really in-depth journalism and investigation on crypto, because he looks, like you do, he looks, on-chain, he looks at the block explorers, he connects all the wallets and all the transactions, so he's really thorough.
Okay, cool. Very interesting.
But I just talked a lot.
Yes.
You've got some key dates to update people on.
Yes, we've got some big things happening this week, which will very likely influence all markets, but we are very much caring about the crypto market at the moment. So 2 big things happening both on Thursday, Australia time. So the rate announcement in the US happens Wednesday US time, early morning Thursday for us. And if there is any kind of a drop in the rates, I think the prediction is 0.25% drop. If that happens, or there's a bigger rate drop, we would assume that will influence the crypto market positively. You could counter that by saying that maybe it's already priced in because the market has been rising over the last couple of days. But what I would hope to see, and this is just delusion, I don't think this will actually happen, but if we see a bigger rate cut than 0.25%, I think that will really heavily influence a bullish momentum in the market.
That's
and
a
the crypto
launch
market.
pad.
Yeah, big launch pad.
Yeah.
And then later that day, so in South Korea, President Trump and Xi Jinping are having their meeting to discuss tariffs and a few other things, but it will be some much bigger clarity around the tariffs that have been causing all of the market turbulence recently. So hopefully after Thursday, which is when this episode comes out, we will have some much more clarity around what direction the crypto market is going to go. But I will be watching both announcements very closely with my finger hovered over the buy or sell button on my SwiftX app.
Yeah, it's so hard to know like what the outcome of this is going to be, and I think a lot of it comes down to, if you're in that sort of prediction game, it's like how sort of the sentiment of people talking about the event who are close to the event. So like people like Scott Bessent, who's the SEC chair, he's being very optimistic around the the conversations happening between Trump and Xi. Trump's also been very complimentary of Xi online, which makes you think, they're going to have a favorable outcome here. So it appears that the 100% tariff that I spoke about before is now off the table. That was sort of a bit of a scare tactic from Trump. Well, it definitely scared me and the rest of the market. But I think overall, the sentiment around it is starting to look more positive, which is great, right? Now, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed. Like, I'm sure they'll come out with some sort of tariff, but the hope is that it's a lot more favorable for both China and the US than a 100% tariff.
Yeah, we would hope so. I mean, who knows with these things? I feel like everything recently that we've tried to predict, either online in a format like this or offline, we have just been shocked by everything. Who could have predicted except for the person who shorted the market, who could have predicted the 100% tariff on a Saturday morning, our time as well, Friday night in America. Yeah, it was super sus.
This last segment, I want to get your thoughts. I'm going to give my thoughts, how we're playing the current market, what we think is going to happen over the next couple of months, and sort of where you're sitting. Are you still bullish?
I'm still bullish, which is why I'm holding. I'm mainly a long-term holder. I'm not a day trader. I'm not someone who will be constantly buying and selling, but I am wondering when I will close out my positions in this current cycle. I get conflicting information. I'll likely sell all of my alts. I don't know when. I've been advised to hold my Bitcoin through the next bear market if we have one, because it's going to be too hard to predict. We may not have a long bear market like we've had in the past with all this institutional money. So it's going to be really hard to try and predict when the bottom of this market is. It might not be 12 months, it might be 3 months, it might be 4 months. It may not begin now. I may be wrong with my dates. So we may have the bear market beginning early next year in the first quarter.
Yep.
I just don't know if I'm brave enough to hold all the way till then. So for me, I'm bullish short term, but I do think we're going to experience a bear market. It's just trying to decide what to do with Bitcoin versus the alts. Alts will go, Bitcoin may stay, if I'm brave enough to hold for the drops.
Yeah, I'm probably in a similar boat. Like, you're looking to make profit on alts, whereas Bitcoin's more of a longer term asset you want to hold, potentially till retirement, right? Because because it's so stable these days, like stable in crypto land. Yeah. But there's also a lot of utility from it. Like, I know you have got a crypto back loan using your Bitcoin as what's it called? Collateral. Yeah, which allows you to borrow against your Bitcoin. Like, there's a lot of opportunities like that, and I only think they're going to get more and more.
Yeah.
So I'm in a similar boat, and so I want to touch on why I'm bullish as well. Is touching on the geopolitical tensions. It appears that the 100% tariff is off the table. People are optimistic, particularly Scott Bessent, around the discussions happening between Xi and Trump later this week. So pending that, I'm bullish. But on top of that, I think we've got to look a little bit more deep into liquidity and how it's affecting gold, which I know Chris spoke on last week, but then also Bitcoin, because there is a big correlation between all these things. So historically, gold moves first when global financial conditions begin to ease, right? Which we've seen, right? Gold typically moves in anticipation of easing financial conditions. It's hit a new all-time high. It's retracted a little bit, but I still think it hasn't topped out for this, current cycle. And then similarly, like, Bitcoin follows once liquidity expands. And we're already seeing M2 is like what we use to track liquidity in the market. And liquidity is starting to increase, not at the levels that we saw in 2021, but it is starting to trend in the right direction. And Bitcoin is almost like a one-to-one correlation of M2 liquidity. It's basically a pure form of, how the market reacts when liquidity is introduced to the market. It's like people look at gold and then they rotate that into Bitcoin, and then if it continues to expand, maybe even altcoins. So I'm following everything very closely. Some analysts are even saying that this is a very similar structure to 2020, where gold moved first and then followed by Bitcoin, and then obviously we had that huge crypto bull run. Now, I'm not saying, I don't want to call that yet. I don't want to call altcoins, altcoin season yet, but I'm just looking at gold, M2, and Bitcoin and how it's all correlating. And currently, it's setting up really nicely for a nice little run-up.
Which would be good, because it feels, I don't know about you, but it feels to me like this market has never had that mania phase. Yes, we've had a really good run-up. If you look at the price of Bitcoin from January 2023 all the way to now, yes, we've had 600% roughly increase, maybe a little bit less. But it just doesn't feel like that mania phase we had through 2021, where everything just felt like you could not go wrong. There was no asset. Every time you looked at the market, green, green, green.
Yeah.
A red day was so rare. So I'm hoping that with gold's huge all-time highs recently, that, yeah, we are setting up hopefully for a really big crypto run. But again, am I brave enough to hold through? So I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, like, I bought the dip on Bitcoin mainly and a little bit of Hyperliquid. But yeah, I'm just focusing on the Bitcoin. I am looking to sell off my alt similarly to you at some stage in the next 6 months. I'm just sort of waiting to see more things play out, right? I really want to get it right. I'm not super confident that we're going to see the top of the market this cycle.
Is there a point where the market drops to a level that you decide it's time to get out? Is there a point where you think that we will have entered bear market territory?
That's a really good question. I think it would have to be more, like, my decision would be made up more than just price, right? It would be made up of, macro conditions overseas, geopolitical tensions. Like, if, wars are happening and a trade war is happening between US and China, then that's obviously more significant than just, Bitcoin dropping 20%. So I would make my decision up based on a lot of different factors.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the drawing back to Chris's episode last week. That was some of the calming things that I had, because everything he said there was a lot of positivity. Obviously, he talked about the risk and that he may not be right, but I think, not just looking at the price is the big thing right now.
Yeah.
Looking at all of the external factors.
Awesome. Well, that'll probably be us for today's episode. You might be on again next week, Cal. We don't really know. Pav says he's meant to prioritize the podcast, but apparently he's got other...
He's prioritizing his children.
Yeah. Which I don't fully understand, but,
Well, anytime you would like me to come and try and fill Pav's shoes, I'm more than happy to.
Absolutely, mate.
It's an honor to be here. So, yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Absolutely. We'll make sure to update everyone on those key dates that you spoke of, so the interest rates and also the the meeting between Trump and Xi from China, and how that will impact the market.
Yeah, well,
cool.
I guess we'll see.
Awesome. See you guys next week.